making zombie movies. So I would say for a good 20 years there, I didn't think one thing or the other about zombie movies. They just didn't. They weren't part of my world there for years. And then I did see the Dawn of the Dead remake, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what fascinated me about these movies. And again, in the time that I hadn't been watching zombie movies, I'd been studying theology, and I realized, oh, I could articulate what it was that fascinated me about these movies all along. Which, when I first saw the original Dawn of the Dead, I was 13, I guess, right? When you're 13, you see a zombie movie, what's your reaction? Cool. That was cool. Did you see that? That was cool. But that movie stuck with me. But in the intervening years, I've gotten the framework and the vocabulary to be able to articulate what it was that was cool about this, what it was that was interesting, what it was trying to say.
Scott.
Which did you enjoy writing more, Dying to Live or Gospel of the Living Dead?
Gospel of the Living Dead, I've done other nonfiction works, so I suppose I was sort of used to that process. Although I have to say the research for that certainly was a lot of fun, because I had to watch the movies over and over. And some of those I hadn't seen since the 80s. So that was certainly a very nostalgic and fun process. But as I said, since I hadn't written fiction for going on 20 years, I think to be able to get back into it was the more novel and the more exciting experience. So I was very happy to be writing fiction.
If you were forced to pick, which of your two works are you more proud of? Do you consider your best?
Well, I guess the way to do it would be to compare them to other books of their type. So I'd say in that sense, Gospel of the Living Dead, I think, is better than other pop culture analysis from a religious perspective. So I suppose I'd go with that, whereas Dying to Live is the best first novel I could write, but I don't think it's as good as some other zombie novels out there.
What's your personal Live? Your turn. That one.
What is your personal favorite Romero film?
I'm still going to have to go with the original Dawn. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with when you see a movie, and as I said, I saw that when I was 13, and it really did open my eyes to that kind of horror, and that kind of horror that has a deeper subtext to it, and it's not just shock or fright. And really, I never have gotten into regular horror that much. I never was a Friday the 13th fan. I mean, I always thought they were sort of funny, I guess, but not anything that I would go back to. But I think what's strong about Romero and why he continues to fascinate people is that each movie has something to offer. It's not like he's ever made the perfect one, and all the rest are sort of trying to live up to that. Each one does have sort of a unique vision of what he wants to get across.
What's your least favorite?
Of his? I really appreciate what he's trying to do with Day, but I think the movie is so dark. I just mean visually. It's not a depressing movie. I mean, Night is much more depressing in that sense, but I just think physically it's it's hard for me to tell what's going on all the time on the screen. It's very hard for me to tell what people are saying. I think just acoustically, I think it's a nightmare. And the people talk a lot in that movie. They talk a little too much. Again, when I was talking about writing stories, I think pacing is important, and I think you need to alternate action and dialogue. But so much of that movie is just bogged down with people, just yelling at each other for a lot of it. That I find it a hard movie to watch, even though I think the ideas in it. And if I could decipher the dialogue, I think it would be really fascinating, because I think that he really is getting at some of the things that he wants to get at in terms of what's sick with our society.
I got that impression from your section of Gospel of the Living Dead. It didn't seem to be, or the section on Day of the Dead, rather, and it didn't seem to be your favorites compared to some of the others.
Right. I just think narratively it doesn't fly.
Yeah. So, who was your favorite author while you were growing up?
Growing up. And it's funny because I would never think of writing fantasy, but I would probably say Tolkien. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that world, the moral vision that he has, the way that he uses these kind of fantastical creatures to have very human relationships. I mean, I think the friendship between Sam and Frodo is always so touching, and I do remember I'd read all three of them every summer for like years, which is like a lot of pages. So I really did appreciate it.
Any present-day authors you really enjoy reading or conversing with?
I've thrown myself into this whole horror genre so much that I'm trying to catch up on current writers. And I think Dave Wellington's stuff is tremendous. I think the first one especially is just a really tremendous novel. I have been really excited by Strauss, because his updating of the Lovecraft story I thought was a really nice take on it. Current, like people who are still alive. I'm so used to reading people who are long gone. Those are the ones that jump to mind.
I'm skipping that. You just said that like 7 times.
Yep. Well, that was the question we did at the time.
So, what do you enjoy about zombie horror?
Yeah, I think it's got a bunch of things going for it as it is done by people who are good at it. I think it's got a bunch of things going for it, I suppose, that appeal to me. The action's always intense. I mean, I think it's always got that baseline of this is going to be a very harrowing kind of experience, whether it's on film or in writing. And I think so it always has that kind of visceral, adrenaline kind of appeal. And yet, I do think in the hands of the good, still very sort of dark aspect to it. And I guess when you're asking me before about who my influences were, when I think about the kinds of, never mind narrative, but the kinds of theological books I'm interested in, I am always interested in something that is more dark, more about sin, more about evil, those aspects. So I think zombies are a really good vehicle for those kinds of images. I mean, they are. I think they're the walking dead. They're the walking damned. So they are perfect for that. And I think the other thing that they do, maybe that some other monsters don't do, is they're just funny, right? Because, I mean, Shaun of the Dead played it up perfectly. Is that this is just a really funny monster, right? I mean, vampires kind of take themselves too seriously, and their fans take them too seriously. But you can't take a zombie too seriously. He's just sort of funny.
And the last question for the day: how do you feel about the present state of the horror genre, both in film and literature?
Boy, I've been hanging out on message boards too much, and everybody's talking about how it's the end of the world, and horror's done with, and we're all going to be finished off. Things come and go. I mean, it's very easy to do horror badly, right? It's very easy just to have that visceral approach. Whether it's in a low-budget movie, whether it's in a high-budget movie, I don't think it matters, or whether you're churning out another story that's like a lot of others that have gone before. So I think horror is always going to have that bad rap. Is that, oh, it's just splatter. Oh, it's just this. But I think these things go in cycles, and I think there's always going to be room, and there's always going to be people doing it in a more thoughtful way. And I think they're the ones that last, and they're the ones that people will remember in the next generation. So I'm not, I can't say that horror is like, the way it's supposed to be, or there's no room for improvement. But I'm not going to say that like it's, it's over with. And I think the other thing that people forget, we're just always going to need that kind of literature. There's always been an appeal, a market, a desire, whatever you want to say, for literature and movies that have that effect on us, that scare us. And so I'm really, fairly optimistic.
Thank you very much for coming out and visiting us. This is Kim Paffenroth.